fellow travelers, welcome on in. I'm going to start this intro over again because my brain doesn't work.
Go for it.
Greetings, fellow travelers. Welcome on in to the 133rd level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 199 human Dark Lord Ryan Turford, and I am joined, as always, by the level 199 elf battle alchemist, Dr. Garret Bland. How's it going, Garret?
I'm doing good, man. You know, there's actually one thing I want to tell you. Very exciting.
Oh?
Today, I commuted to work by boat.
What?
Yes, the second time.
James Bond?
The second time. Yes. I have access to a ferry boat that goes from my place all the way over to my work. And it has a shuttle service over there to take me to my work building. So, yeah, it was pretty good.
Is it faster to get you to your work that way across the ferry?
It's about the same time, but I don't have to drive, so it's fine. So it's like a 10-minute drive to the ferry station, and then I just hang out in the boat for like an hour. Okay. And that's why I can do I could game, I can work, I can listen to music, I can do whatever.
Yeah.
And then shuttle service takes about like 10 minutes to get over.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad. That's not too bad. But it's like an hour drive for you then?
Yes, during heavy traffic, if you want to cross the Bay Bridge, you just pray to hope to God
that you
don't.
Yeah. Especially like you work normal person hours, so of course like it's gonna be like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Even like I would say 7:30 or 8 a.m. It ramps up. Like it doesn't matter really. So
I mean that is kind of one of those things that just comes with living in a big city because like Toronto's like that too. I just happen to work like non-standard hours, so I never have to deal with a lot of that stuff because like that is one of the benefits of actually working at night is not having to deal with.
Yeah, no, these bridges really they're just chokeholds, of traffic, and just highways in general. But anyways,
I was just gonna say our highways are very much that for sure. So
yeah, very scenic. I see San Francisco from going across. I just see it from left to right, just. All the skyscrapers and stuff, don't have to worry about it. There's not much too in the boat. Like it's just the typical people that need to go to work in the area I'm working at. So yeah, not bad. So that's my one thing.
So you're gonna take the train. Sorry, I'm now stuck on this boat thing now.
Yeah.
Are you gonna take the boat more often?
Well, I don't need to go to work like all the time.
No, but I mean like when you go to work.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, there's no going back. Yeah, okay. I hate driving across the bridge. It costs $7 to me. The boat is free for me because it's a free perk. My God. You're starting to become a true city person, Garret. Because like on the Pants Patreon podcast for patrons podcast this week, which of course was my week to do the show, I got a question from HVAC Sparky about living in the city and people living in the city who don't have driver's license for the most part. And it's for that reason where it's just like, it's so much cheaper to not drive anywhere. That's why most people here don't drive. Cause like there's no reason, especially with parking here, which is ridiculous. Yeah. It depends on the city. I would say like San Francisco, it's like, if you work in in the city, yes, you don't have to drive that much. Actually, it's, probably a burden to drive even within the city or around there, but like I would say more in like southern cities it's still hard. I don't know, it's and typically work is outside the city, or at least a few or 10 miles out, or you have to take the BART or you have to take the train, whatever.
Whereas I work right downtown, so it's like
downtown.
So of course, transit's just way easier, especially because I'm across the street from where the Blue Jays play and like down the street where the Maple Leafs and the Raptors play. So like if there's a game at all that night, like good luck finding a parking spot at all.
Yeah, no, it's going to be completely busy and it's just terrible. So yeah.
Good.
City life don't really need a license. So there you go.
Well, see, you know what, Garret, we had to expand this number one thing because of the fact that you didn't have three things for me. So like we took the one thing and we expanded it out. We expanded to 7 things, so there you go. Look, it's fine. We have only wasted 5 minutes of people's time at this point, so
that's not bad. That's a record.
That's what I mean. It seems fine to me, and I didn't even mention the weather once, Sean. So you can't even get upset with me about it.
It's pretty nice over here.
I mean, it's like 20 degrees out here in Toronto, so it's
pretty
nice.
cold.
Not 20 degrees Celsius, Garrett.
I know.
Yeah.
I like to
Anyways,
make that joke.
This is the RPG cave where we talk about RPGs all the time, except for when we're talking about bridges and boats and stuff.
Yeah.
So let's clear that dungeon so we can get to the raid boss as quickly as possible. So folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways you can do it. Number one, if you're watching live stream right now over youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to hit that like button, slightly smash kick that subscribe button, and let us know in the comments below what you think about Larian Studios. We would love to hear from y'all. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to, of course, rate us if you're listening on Spotify, or leave us a nice Apple Podcast review, or even just hitting that subscribe button helps go a long way as well. Also, if you want one big podcast feed with the entire Carpool Gaming cinematic universe on it, head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/carpoolgaming, just like Hopple did, who increased their level of support, as well as Shane Erickson, who hopped on in, did the hopping motion here, hopped on into the gold tier, of course, the official tier of the PlayStation Drive. So shout out to Shane Erickson and Hopple.
Which one's not the official PlayStation version, whatever tier?
Just the ultimate producers, because the rest are named after PlayStation trophies. So
then the Xbox is the ultimate producers. I see. Okay.
See what we did there? I mean, we didn't just haphazardly walk into this, okay? But also, I just want to give a shout out again, as I mentioned earlier, my Patreon podcast for patrons podcast episode is out as well.
Nice.
Because I was this week's host, so definitely check that out there. Or if you have questions for Lockleth, because I know everyone loves Lockleth, head on over there and ask Lockleth a question, and she'll answer it this week. Maybe ask her about the weather if you want to. And just say Ryan asked me to ask you about the weather, kind of thing. But anyways, Garrett, we should probably hop into. But hold on, we're gonna do an RPG side quest first. I forgot about
side quest, yeah.
Because we're like, I'm like, the sacred texts are right over there, but I see like a little quest marker over there, Garrett.
Yeah. We need to go over there. I always get sidetracked.
I mean, what better way to get sidetracked, but with the ultimate sidetracking kind of game that got turned into a TV series. That everyone in the world seems to be watching. The Fallout TV series is out, Garrett.
Yes.
Of course, the Fallout TV series, RPG adjacent, because it's based off a role-playing game franchise, of course. So we got to at least talk about it a little bit here. We're not going to do like a deep discussion or anything like that. I think we might be saving that for something else that might be coming up. Wink, wink. But the main thing is we want to at least talk about it here a little bit. We might talk about it in the show in the future as well. But like, I would love to hear, Garrett's thoughts about it and stuff like that. Because I'm sure you're like really interested in talking to someone about the Fallout TV series. At this point.
No, I do.
Being like, one of Carpool Gaming's resident Fallout fans, right? So.
Yeah. I love Fallout, the series so much. Me and Fiona watched through this series Friday and Saturday. And let me tell you, Ryan, I absolutely adored this show. I think it really hit the mark on just the style and just the characters in the story. I think it just nailed the Fallout, what it's going for, the style of it, the gore, I think the story beats it does a pretty good job. So overall, I'm very satisfied with the Fallout TV series. Yeah. And every Fallout fan should watch this show. It's like required watching.
100%. Because I said this on the PlayStation Drive this week, Garrett, because we talked a little bit about it over there too. But like, it felt like I was watching Fallout 5, which is cool.
Exactly.
Because like that's the fact that they instilled that feeling in me just makes me feel like all the more confident that they absolutely nailed the tone and everything with the show.
Honestly, when I finished out that show, I'm like, I think Todd Howard really thought these ideas would be in Fallout 5, a lot of them. So, it's pretty interesting. But more discussion later, of course, in other pieces of content. Not right now, though.
For sure. I mean, the main thing is we've both watched it. We both really enjoyed it. And to your point, I think everyone who likes Fallout should go watch it, especially if you like the California specific Fallout stories, Fallout 1 and 2 or New Vegas. I think this is gonna be your jam if you haven't watched it yet.
Right.
So, But anyways, let's now, now we're done that side quest here. We got like 20 XP. We got some gil. And then we're now going to walk back.
We didn't level up yet, though.
No, come on. We're level 199. It's the experience bar is like 3 to 4
We barely went
XP.
anywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sounds good.
Exactly. Because now, Garrett, it is time to read from the sacred texts because we're going to do another studio breakdown. We haven't done one of these in a while, Garrett.
That's true.
Mainly because we're kind of running out of studios at this point. We've done most of them at this point, actually. Like most of the
we did a lot.
Yeah.
The essential ones, really.
Yeah, I mean we even made Savoy Prime happy by doing a Neon Falcom one at one point.
Yeah, I bared through it. I don't know how I did it, but we did it.
I hadn't played any of those games, so I also don't know how we managed to go through that as well. But so we're going to talk about Larian Studios today, which I think is like a really interesting studio when you kind of look at their history, because
yeah, definitely.
Most people, when they think about Larian, they think of them for Baldur's Gate 3 specifically from last year.
Yeah, I think that definitely set them on the radar for sure. But I think you and me both know they do have an interesting past. They have some, I would say, Divinity Original Sin really put them on the mark, at least for me. Those kinds of games. But before that, I haven't heard from them as much either. They're a pretty quiet studio.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
which is crazy to think about because Divinity Original Sin, Garrett, originally came out in 2014.
I still can't believe that.
But they, as a studio, have been around since 1996.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So they must have had something between 1996 and 2014. And yeah, so we'll talk about those games, but yeah, 2014 still seems so long. That's 10 years ago. I was like, I can't believe it.
Yeah, because I remember when Divinity Original Sin came out, that was again around when the PS4 came out, and eventually, I think a year later in 2015, we got the console edition of it, and that was
yes, I remember that.
And that was the first game from that I'd ever played was the console version of Divinity Original Sin. But yeah, we're gonna, of course, Garrett. Whenever we do one of these look-ins, it's time for fun facts. I
love the fun facts.
We got to dive into the fun facts and kind of, learn about the history of the studio a little bit, or at least how they got started. And we'll talk about, some of their franchises and stuff. So first off, the story of Larian Studios starts with its founder, Sven Venke. I hope I say his name correctly. I don't know what the exact pronunciation is because I don't think I've ever heard his name specifically spoken out loud.
Is it SWVAN or something
SWEN?
Oh,
Sven.
Sven Venke. Isn't he Swedish?
He is from Belgium. Okay.
Oh, he's from Belgium. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, close enough though. But anyways, at a young age, he was really into video games. He talked in a bunch of interviews about going to arcades a lot, and and he was also a pretty big athletic person. But I remember reading this story in an interview that he did last year, where he was talking about how he was sick in bed, and he was disappointed because he couldn't go out and play basketball with his friends. And some of his friends felt bad for him, and they'd found this old ZX PC for him, and they're just like, oh well, why don't you play some of this while you're in bed for a few weeks? He was he talks about it where he didn't name the specific illness, but he was he was sick for a few weeks, so he was kind of holed up.
Oh dang!
Was going a little bit stir crazy, so he booted up this PC and he started playing a bunch of these old timey RPGs like the Ultima series or old CRPGs at the time, or ones that were based off the D&D license, because games based off the D&D license go all the way back to the 70s with the Atari 2600, as well as a bunch of other consoles and PCs at the time. So he was playing just obsessed with these types of games. So he's like, oh man, I'm really into this gaming thing. I'd like to make one of these days. And in fact, while he was, sick and he was playing some of these games, he also started to learn programming. And he told the story about how he developed this game with his dad. Him and his dad basically just sat down and just developed a game together after reading some programming books.
Fortran?
I don't think he said it specifically in the interview. But what he talked about though was he made
some
a hunting
ancient language.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, like he made like a almost like a Cabela's like game or something like that, where it's almost like a point and click kind of shooting game, which is interesting. So they made that kind of game together. It wasn't an RPG, which is just odd considering how much he talked about how he was obsessed with role playing games. But so of course this really convinced him to pursue a career in programming. When going to university, he attended Ghent University, that's going to come into play in a second here.
Yeah.
And he, of course, got his degree in programming and was originally going to actually go into the field of speech recognition because he wanted to kind of make
interesting
instead of game design. But, at the last minute, right after graduating, he's like, no, actually, I kind of want to do games instead. And his reasoning, he said in the interview, was that he wanted to, like, if he went into speech recognition, like, he wouldn't be able to see the joy on people's faces by using the product of speech recognition, whereas with games, it's very apparent. You can see kind of the looks of joy on people's faces when they play a game. So he's like, oh well, I kind of want to do that instead. So this actually led him to actually found Larian Studios in Ghent, where of course he went to school, which is in Belgium, in 1996. So he actually started, he got some venture capital from his dad. And
wow.
He formed the studio himself with, a couple of small employees. Like they were a very tiny team to start out. But now actually like Larian Studios, I don't know if you knew this, Garrett, but they have 6 different studios all around the world currently.
Wow. I saw the number of employees. It was like 450 or something like that. I'm surprised how large it is. Because it just sounds like a smaller team, at least just from the rhetoric coming from them. Because it's really just him, Sven, like as kind of the headpiece.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize how many studios were really across.
Oh yeah,
the globe.
They have studios in Canada. I didn't even realize that until I read through like some of the research for this episode. I thought that was super cool to hear. But yeah, like it's interesting to hear. Like how much they've really expanded since then. But like I think they what I was reading, they had like 10 members at the start, essentially. Which
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's not uncommon from a lot of the other studio look backs that we've done.
Now I have to ask you, Ryan, I'm sure you've done your in-depth searching and knowledge. Were there any other Belgianese game studios ever around that time? Because it just sounds rare. It sounds like Larian Studios and they're like the 2 ones I think like really I guess Belgium is not in Eastern Europe, but it's closer, guessed. But yeah, I just think it's pretty interesting to hear a Belgium studio coming out of there in that time.
Like I did do a quick search, Garrett, and like there ain't many, but there's a few
there's a few
studios, but like. You're right in the sense that most like it's obviously the biggest one for sure to come out of Belgium. But even then, it's like they're competing with like 6 or 7 other companies at this point. So yeah, they're definitely the biggest ones. But what's interesting, Garrett, is that first of all, Sven talks about the story about going to kind of like the E3 equivalent, but for that region. It wasn't Gamescom; it was a different. Convention that I forgot off the top of my head. It's like it's got this different acronym from E3.
Okay.
And in fact, actually, it predates E3 because I think he talked about it going to it in 1994.
Yeah, no, that's before E3. That's kind of crazy. Yeah.
So he talks about going there and trying to mingle with people and trying to get contracts and stuff. And they eventually got a company with like a contract with a small European publisher for their first game, for Larian's first game. And they were like, okay, Larian, we've built this studio because we want to make role-playing games. So we're approaching this contract because we want to make a role-playing game. And the company was like, well, actually, y'all haven't really made any games yet, and we don't want to take a chance on a role-playing game. So if you want the funding for your game, you're going to go ahead and have to make a real-time strategy game. Because at the time, all the popular games were real-time strategy games. Like
that was big during that time, for sure. You got Age of Empires, you got Red Alert, you got Command and Conquer, you got there's so many, and Warcraft.
Yeah, Warcraft, StarCraft, like all that stuff was out then. So it's just like, this led to their first game being a real-time strategy game.
I love it.
They came out in 1997. It's called the LED Wars.
LED Wars, yes.
Yeah, which is a real-time strategy. And if I've seen, gameplay of this, Garrett, it looks exactly like Command and Conquer. Like,
yes, no joke.
to the T. Fun fact about this, though, Garrett, it was developed in 5 months. Basically from pre-production to release. Can you imagine,
like, hearing that now? Like a studio making a game in 5 months, it's unbelievable. Like even an indie game, like a typical indie game studio, it's just nowhere near close.
No, the closest we get to that are sports games, because sports games usually are developed from pre-production to release in 10 months.
Right.
So, that's like the closest like to a modern day example we would get, but like obviously you get diminishing returns with that, and you're not it's not like they reused game assets. It was their first game as a studio. Was this
scratch
real-time strategy game, which I think is just hilarious, because like Sven in the interviews talks about like how excited the team was to make a role playing game, and they're like, well, I guess we got to go make this game instead. But the LED Wars, it had some, good reviews. It wasn't, a huge hit or anything like that, but it gave their publishing company, and other companies out there, the confidence in them, where they could actually trust them with.
So let me ask you, I don't know if you know this, but did they print it on disc?
They did.
Okay. They just kind of sold it out to, game stores, computer stores, whatever. Next to the Command and Conquers, next to the Red Alerts. Okay, all right.
I mean, a lot of studios were doing that. I mean, it's just like,
I'm sure,
every game trying to be a GTA clone kind of a thing.
Right.
In fact, I saw copies of it going for $10 on eBay.
Hey, you can get some history of Larian Studios for $10 right there.
Exactly.
Nice.
But obviously, this helped open the door for them to be able to do what they actually wanted to do, Garrett. But what's interesting enough is when you think about modern day Larian, when they first started, very different approach to role-playing games with where they started. So their first game under the Divinity series, which of course was the first RPG that they were allowed to develop, was called Divinity. And it launched on September 22nd, 2002. And it was an action RPG in an isometric kind of way, similar to Diablo. Like it was basically a Diablo clone in a lot of ways. So you're clicking on the enemies, and that's how you're attacking them, and you're exploring these environments, and that's how that game played. In fact, their first couple games, like Beyond Divinity as well, was also like this, where they were both Diablo style role playing games. And it wasn't really until 2009's Divinity 2 Ego Draconis, which came to PC, but also was on Xbox 360 all consoles. That was also an action RPG, but it was like a 3D kind of hack and slashy kind of RPG.
So interesting to hear. Now, okay, so they have Divine Divinity, Beyond Divinity, and then Divinity 2. Okay, what's the... Divinity 2 is the sequel to what? Divine Divinity or Beyond Divinity? That's interesting to hear.
I don't think it has to make a lot of sense, okay?
No,
it's fine. Because if you read the synopsis of Beyond Divinity and where it fits in the timeline, it's a sequel to Divine Divinity, but then Divinity 2 is a sequel to that.
So, okay. They just called it, okay, we need this to be the second one.
They just need one to put a 2 in the title, Garrett.
We'll number it from there.
Yeah. Well, it's just like they couldn't skip over a number.
Yeah, that's true.
Like they had to put a number that they had to, number it number 2. Otherwise, people would have been confused, like Final Fantasy 3 being Final Fantasy 6. Man. Yeah. But then, after that, of course, Divinity 2 got an expansion pack the following year. But then in 2013, Garrett, I don't know if you've seen this game, Divinity Dragon Commander came out, which is basically them returning to their real-time strategy roots.
So weird.
Developing a real-time strategy game. But what's interesting about this game, Garrett, is that you have like a real-time strategy map, but you will summon these dragon riders, And as you summon the Dragon Riders, it then shifts down perspective to third-person camera of the Dragon Riders.
Oh my
and you
goodness.
fly them around and attack, towns and stuff like that, or enemy units, and you play the game in third person, and then you can switch to the overhead map at any time. Like, it's a crazy-looking game that I didn't know existed until doing research for this episode.
Yeah, I saw the name. I didn't really dive into it too much, but that sounds interesting. Was it just on PC or also on
Just
Xbox?
on PC.
Yeah. This sounds like just a PC type of game, especially real-time strategy. But yeah, interesting to hear.
Although this was around the time, Garrett, where we were getting other real-time strategy games on consoles, because we also had the Command and Conquer's games coming to Xbox. The Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2 was on Xbox. Supreme Commander, which is like one of the games that invokes like the thought process, this game needs a mouse to play it. It was on Xbox 360.
So weird.
So yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't stick with Xbox. But of course, there are 7 games in total in the Divinity series, which of course we'll talk about more as we kind of go along. But also, this led to Baldur's Gate 3, in 2023, because it really wasn't until 2014's Divinity Original Sin where we got their current model of games.
Yes,
that's
that's their RPG. Like that's the template, and they're gonna keep on at it, I think.
Or at least the one that you think of when you think about games from Larian Studios. So, what do you think so far about the history of the studio? Because I think it's like super interesting and cool.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a interesting turn for Larian Studios. I'm glad, where they are today, super successful, winning all these awards. You would just never you would just never think this kind of studio would have the chops and ready to do it and ready to go and transform and be what they are right now and earn the respect to even make Baldur's Gate 3. Because that's not their IP. It's Wizard of the Coast IP. Yeah. It's a huge honor, and I think they really kind of made it. I'm glad that they did it and lived up to the expectation and even beyond that. And but it's very interesting to hear their humble grounds, especially the LED wars. It doesn't sound like many games though. Like from a typical RPG studio, I think of Bethesda. I think of CD Projekt Red. I guess CD Projekt Red didn't do too many either, but it just sounds like they were just doing these typical Divinity games up until Divinity Original Sin, which I think put everyone's it definitely put mine, but really like every gamer, like the studio on their map, because that really blew up, I think.
Yeah, because I think that's actually what kind of led to the fever pitch of Baldur's Gate, because I don't think they would have gotten to that fever pitch with that game if it wasn't for Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, Right. And really honing that formula with those 2 games specifically. And in fact, there was supposed to be a third game in the Divinity, Original Sin kind of branching part of the timeline that was supposed to come out in 2019. But that actually got canceled. It was called Divinity Fallen Heroes.
Interesting.
Which was supposed to kind of close out kind of the storyline from Original Sin 1 and 2. But that ended up getting canceled, I guess, around the time, that when they got the license for Baldur's Gate 3. They didn't really talk too much about why that game got canceled, other than they just decided to cancel it. But it's really interesting and cool to see how they've kind of tried to find their place in the world a little bit over the years, where, they tried a bunch of different things and threw a bunch of ideas at the wall until they finally found kind of what sticks and what they like to do as well. And it all harkens back to the story I told about, Sven's childhood, because he was obsessed with these types of games. And it wasn't really until 2014 where they were like, oh, maybe we should just make one of those. And that kind of, became kind of their shtick.
Yeah, definitely. I think they set the template for a modern day CRPG. Like they're probably one of the, I would say, foundation of that for sure. They brought a lot of, I think, quality of life stuff to what I played, a Divinity Original Sin 2. I don't know, I don't know what CRPG beforehand, unless it was like Baldur's Gate 2 or something like that, it really had that kind of, it had the same genre, same mechanics, but I think they made it really modern day. And they put it on console too. And the controls were really nice as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like the closest analog to that for like their modern day rival would be Pillars of Eternity.
Pillars of Eternity. Yeah, for sure. No, you're right.
Because like I feel like that's like they almost were like pushing each other a little bit, adding a bunch of different features and really honing that style of game, which is super interesting. Which then begs the question: it's like, well, of course now, Garrett, we know that they talked about in interviews that Baldur's Gate 4 is not next from them. They are not doing another Wizards of the Coast game. They're doing something else. So what do you think actually is next for Larian? Do we think like they're going to go back to Divinity, or they're going to do like, do we want to see them do like a new IP, or like what do we think about this?
Yeah, I don't know about this one. It seems like they're pretty versatile. They did their action RPG, they've done their CRPG, they've done the real-time strategy. I can see kind of anything from them. I hear that Divinity, I think it's just rumors when I was reading into it. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're going back to Divinity series.
Yeah.
I think their next project's gonna be brand new. Hopefully it's more just just an evolution from Baldur's Gate 3 and Divinity Original Sin 2. I can totally see another CRPG because Baldur's Gate 3 was such a huge success and their reputation's now in that genre. But I would not be surprised to see a very different twist or very different take into the CRPG genre. I think.
Although also I'm just like, do they even do another CRPG? Maybe they want to try something. Maybe they do something different. Maybe they go back to some of these older ideas. Like, what if they made another game like Divinity Dragon Commander, where it's a real time strategy game where you control dragons in third person or something crazy like that?
Yeah, I think I think it would be smart for them. And I'm not recommending them anything. Yeah. I'm just trying to think what would be best for them and really like diversifying their portfolio. So I would, for sure have your CRPG kind of next game and be, that's a pretty safe bet. It's like, all right, that is the next game coming from Larian Studios, but then have a smaller team to try to innovate. Yeah. It's like, okay, what else do you want to do? What kind of smaller projects that you can try to turn out? And I think like stuff like Game Pass and PlayStation Plus really helps out building out smaller projects for bigger studios. Like, hey, you're able to risk a little, and then we can take the bag if we like it. I think of that kind of strategy as well. So,
well, especially when you consider the number of employees they have, and also where they're based in the world, because like I said, they've got 6 different studios around the world. Like, you're right. Like, I could almost see them like an Obsidian, where like they have like the big kind of like traditional style Larian game, and then they do like little offshoot ideas. Like I think that would be like super interesting and neat to see, like what some of these other like smaller teams could come up with, because I think they could come up with like some really interesting stuff if they put their minds to it. Again, looking at what they've learned over the years and how they've some of the ideas that they've tried. Like I think they could do like some like outside the box kind of thinking.
Yeah. So. I would like them to get outside the high fantasy stuff. I really want another game that could be either modern day, it could be space, it could be futuristic, it could be historical, but something a little bit more grounded and out of the high fantasy area. And I really want them to really, I want to see that kind of imagination coming from them, because I think they do a very good job with Divinity Original Sin 2. Making their own stuff over there, but I think it's, as it's heavily inspired by high fantasy elements and high fantasy. It's Lord of the Rings is probably the originators, but I would just like to see other things coming from them. But we'll see.
Well, especially because like the LED Wars is the only non-fantasy thing they've done.
Right.
at this point. So you're right. Like, it'd be interesting. Like, what if they did like a Wild West style, D&D, like CRPG style game, or, like a pirate one or something like that. Like, they could go a million different directions with some of this stuff.
And I think the major difference really between Divinity Original Sin 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, at least just for me, is their improved. Obviously, they are enabled to do a really good telling of animations, character animations, and storytelling. Divinity did a pretty good job at that too. It's just that it was all text and reading, very traditional text-based style CRPG, whereas Baldur's Gate 3 is like, here is a very like modernized, here are characters speaking to each other like a Western RPG, not a CRPG, but like, even, it looks like a BioWare Dragon Age type of animations or something like that, so
yeah.
I want to see them lean more into the just story-driven type of elements and see, what? I would be great to see a Western RPG coming from them. I think they can make a pretty good one. That'd
be interesting. I'd be interested to see that. Although, again, we asked for them to go away from fantasy, but again, like as soon as I saw, Sven going on stage at the Game Awards wearing like a chainmail, like,
oh my goodness,
armor set and stuff, I'm just like, that dude's not going to want to go away from fantasy at all, probably.
Yeah. Such a nerd. I love it. I love it a lot. So,
yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, I think they're like a really interesting studio that I just knew that we probably wouldn't get a chance to talk about on the show, especially because, like, it's one thing because, like, you and I really haven't played a lot of the Divinity games. Like, we've dabbled in them, but, like,
right.
Neither of us have finished those games.
No, not even close.
Yeah. And I mean, Baldur's Gate 3, like, people had been clamoring for the longest time for us to do a Baldur's Gate 3 episode down the road, which is also why I'm, like, not trying to spin into us having a deep dive conversation on it, because maybe one day we decide to do that at some point.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm keeping that on the table a little bit, but I'm glad we got a chance to look back on them, because, like, I think that's, again, it's a really interesting story, and I love, when we look back at some of these studios and seeing some of the weird stuff they've tried. And Larian's no different. Like, I think they're actually like a really interesting studio.
So, my question to you, Ryan, I don't know if you know the answer. What's the origins of naming it Larian? That seems weird. Like, is it a guy named Larry? It's like,
I don't know, because I read like 4 different interviews and I did not see an answer to that question. Wikipedia didn't have that answer either. So
wow.
Yeah.
No one asked that question to them. That's
or if they did, it didn't make any of the interviews. But, like, yeah, I couldn't find that information. I would love it though. If someone does know, let us know in the comments below. I would love
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I'm very curious. I other studios I'm not so curious about. I don't know why. Like CD Projekt Red, I was like, okay, cool. That's an interesting name. I can relate to it in a way. It's computer related. And then I think of, but I should ask that question more, because I don't know about Bethesda either. But no, Larian really just caught my attention. It's like, is there a guy named Larry? Is Sven's father named Larry? Like, that's.
I mean, Adam David in the chat says Larry N. That's
Larry N. Oh, okay. I love it. That would be very cool if that was the case.
Yeah, I even did like a quick search, because I was like, oh, well, maybe it's a Belgish kind of term, like a term in like a European language or something like that. And all I get is just
Belgianese.
Like a bunch of Larian Studios, like things that's like that. So, and there's nothing in Google Translate. So, like, yeah, I don't think it actually. I have no idea where that name comes from, but I couldn't find any information about it, which is weird. But yeah, because I know like Sven did a big tour of interviews over the last like year and a half to kind of promote Baldur's Gate, kind of the lead up to it. So we got to see like a lot of this information, because like they had been kind of a quiet studio up until then, where like we just didn't know that much about them at all. Like at the studio itself, like who, like all the people there and stuff like that, and their origins and stuff like that. Like a lot of that stuff just wasn't out there before.
No, very, very quiet. Again, the rhetoric behind it being a small studio, like, Ryan, if you would have asked me a week ago, 2 weeks ago, how many employees are at Larian Studios, I'm like, oh, maybe 100.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. 100 employees living in Belgium or whatever European country That's all I know. But when I saw 450, I was like, wow.
Yep.
They have a lot more than I thought. I'm curious what the financials are on that point, but I know they're very successful, with Baldur's Gate 3, so they have no problem.
I was going to say, I don't think they have to worry about money anytime soon after Baldur's Gate, Garrett.
Well, at the same time, royalties are being paid to Wizards of the Coast, and I'm sure they don't like that either, and that's why they're moving on to a different project. Like, I would totally understand that. And of course, they can expand their imagination chops, so... Yeah, I don't know much about them or their locations. So, again, diversifying a little bit of the portfolio, maybe 2 games, 1 small game, 1 big game. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah, I think they're finally like in a place where they can do that kind of thing. Because there was a time where they probably couldn't do that. But now that they've got like this Quebec office, which is now like pretty large now, as well as, some other studios and stuff like with enough in place, like it's at the very least, Garrett, I don't think it's going to take nearly as long, like 4 years or 5 years before their next game comes out, like it was for Baldur's Gate and Divinity Original Sin 2.
So was Divinity Original Sin in early access too?
It was not.
It was not. Interesting.
It was just Baldur's Gate 3 was their only early access game.
Yeah, that's interesting because it took a long time.
Yep.
I remember for Baldur's Gate 3 to going from early access to full game.
I mean, do you remember why though? Because
the game broke.
No, because it was a Stadia exclusive game.
Oh,
originally.
I don't remember that. Okay,
yes,
interesting.
It was first announced at the Stadia keynote where they announced Stadia was a thing.
Oh my gosh!
And they were actually like Baldur's Gate 3 was basically the big exclusive for Stadia. Was kind of the pitch for it. But then when Stadia fell apart, they're like, oh no, we have to put this on other places or else no one's going to play this game. So because that's where the early access model for Baldur's Gate 3 actually came about, was because it was on, like, that was the model they were using for Stadia to develop the game. But then they just had to move it to PC quickly because Stadia fell apart.
Hey, you know what? That is probably the best move they could have ever had, is to move away from that.
I was just gonna say, because imagine the future, Garrett, of like there's an alternate reality out there somewhere where Stadia didn't fall apart and it's still running, and Baldur's Gate 3 is stuck on Stadia.
Could you imagine that? A person that's just imagine this, a person that's obsessed with computer RPGs, that has a computer that can run anything. And they have to go to freaking Stadia.
Yep. They got to play it in Chrome, Garrett. They have to play it in Chrome.
To connect to their servers in order to run Baldur's Gate 3. It's just unimaginable at that point. It's just wow. Yeah. I'm glad Baldur's Gate 3 is out. I'm glad it's on consoles too, Xbox and PlayStation. It runs really well over there now. The game works now, a bunch of fixes and everything, but great game so far. I need to go back to it, of course.
I mean, it's on the list of like 8 billion games that's on Garrett's backlog at this point, right? So.
Yeah, it's in there. It's parked right now. It's still installed on my Xbox.
Yep.
So, but maybe I'll go back to it.
Yeah. I mean, I like that game too. Like, I like Baldur's Gate 3. I think it's a good game. And I don't know if I ever go back to it at this point though. But I did like it. I did like what I played of that game. I just knew it wasn't going to be like probably a long-term game for me, I think. But it was fun. I enjoyed it.
It's a hard game to beat, I think, because it just takes a lot of time. Of course, it depends on person to person here, because we just, feverishly finished Persona 3 Reload in 70 or 80 hours. But Baldur's Gate 3, it's good, but like, man, it's just with everything. It just depends on the person,
Because likewise, Fee will then come on here and tell us about how she played through the game like 3 or 4 times. So
yeah,
which is it's a whole thing.
I congratulate people that can do that.
yeah. Same.
So,
but so that was our talk about Larian. But we have 2 more questions to round out the show tonight, Garrett. One of them is Larian related.
Okay.
Comes to us from Awesome Dave 1337. Now I will give a shout out to Awesome Dave here. and
Shout
also
out.
give him a thank you. This is the first question we've received on a show I've been on with Awesome Dave 1337, and I think ever, that doesn't involve Final Fantasy VIII.
Wow. He broke the streak.
I'm proud of him. I'm
very proud of him. Wow.
Oh my God. Awesome. Round of applause.
Round of applause. Thank you.
The curse has officially been broken. Although now
we can officially forget about that game, that said game.
Well, please. I know when PlayStation Drive rolls around this week, there will be another question about Final Fantasy. But
of course.
Again, we're giving Awesome Dave his moment. Thank you, Awesome Dave, for being awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, he's got awesome in this name. Of course he's awesome. Anyways, Awesome Dave 1337 asks, with the news that Larian was one of the large backers of the game Blasphemous, do you think other large studios should follow suit and should back indie projects that they support? So we didn't talk about this in kind of the fun facts or anything like that, but Blasphemous, which is a 2D Metroidvania game that came out in 2019, when they were doing their Kickstarter, Larian Studios was one of the bigger supporters of this game. They didn't really get publishing rights or anything like that. They just wanted to help fund the game because they thought it looked cool. So
okay. Was it under the name Larian Studios in Kickstarter?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I think, and this is the only game I've seen them that they did this with, unless there's ones that we didn't know about yet. But should more companies, like more larger studios, follow suit and back indie projects? Well, I think we do see that a little bit, but it's more on the publishing side of things, like what we see with EA Originals, like with the Legend of Zao that's coming out, I think this week or next week. I think that's the type of way where I think larger companies want to support indie titles. I think the problem is the reason why you don't see these big companies going in and supporting a lot of these indie companies through stuff like Kickstarter is what if the game doesn't come out? Even if they throw money at it, we've actually seen a lot of Kickstarter games just not materialize, even if they get 7 or 8 times over what their asking value is, as an example. So I do think that plays into that mindset, because a larger company will probably look at that as lost money when they look at that. Even a company like Larian nowadays, because this happened, before Baldur's Gate, even happened before Divinity Original Sin 2 came out. So they were a very different company back then when they were doing this. So I think modern day Larian might not be going out there and throwing money at smaller studios like this, unless they were involved in the publishing or got some kind of revenue split or something like that to ensure that they got a return on that investment. That's just smart business sense in a lot of ways. But I'm curious to know what you think about this question, Garret.
Well, I think, so this is kind of two different things you're talking about. So I want to separate it a little bit. One thing is supporting a Kickstarter, whatever your name or company or said, or what even it just
is. Throwing out there you give them a donation, even if it's
exactly.
not Kickstarter.
It's just this. It's just a transaction. It's just an agreement that you paid money, and this is exactly your reward. From Kickstarter. This is what we'll promise you. This is what you'll get, and you pay. I don't care what the representation really is. I don't feel obligated for Larian or any other studio. Even if I see EA putting $1,000 into Blasphemous, I was just okay, cool. They just they use their money to put $1,000 in. It's that's their money. It's whatever they want to do, I guess. But you're right. It's probably from a time and place with Larian where they were pretty small enough, and they just all agree. It's hey, this was a cool idea, a cool studio. Let's just pitch in this amount of money, get it, cut it off from, I don't know, paychecks or from this budget or whatever. They come together. They had a collective agreement to do it, and they just did it. And you know what? For me personally, it's just I really don't care what you do with your money. It's up to you. That's your money. Okay, cool.
No. It's one of those things where it's with studios like this, because at the time they didn't really have a bunch of board members and stockholders and stuff that
Right.
they do appease, like a lot of larger companies do, which is why, like, because then they'd have to go to the stockholders and be like, well, the stockholders would be like, hey, why did you give this much money to them when that could have been going to us, kind of thing. Like, that's kind of the way that they would look at that kind of thing. So they obviously can't, do that kind of thing, because they'd have to they usually would divulge that publicly, right? So, like that's the difference here, where I think you actually see this from other indie studios supporting other indie studios out there and making donations like this. And it's the bigger companies that aren't, but I think it's just, there's a lot more, it's not as easy as them just giving money to them. Like, there's other legal things that get tied into it as to why they can't just go spend their money on that.
Well, yeah, they would probably publicly disclose their financials, or anything like of course, we'll see the receipts, and it's fine if it's public, fine as not, whatever. But yeah, I think with your other end, with publishing rights, that's a big thing. And it's a big thing for bigger studios helping out smaller studios. You see it with I think of Gearbox. The creators of Borderlands has a publishing arm, and they really helped out a lot of smaller studios with the publishing rights. And they still do it. And I'm quite surprised how big their publishing arm really is. What's that recent one? Remnant 2.
Remnant 2, yeah.
Yeah. That's a big one coming from Gearbox. And they do various things. So yeah, that's a good way to. I think it's not really servicing small. You are servicing smaller studios, but you both are getting. It's a win-win type of deal. Yeah. You're providing a service that they cannot collectively or efficiently perform or do, and you get the publishing rights. It's a deal. It's a trade deal. So yeah.
I was gonna say, because I think a lot, just the bigger companies do help out indies. They just have a different way of going about it versus just giving them a donation on Kickstarter, or just sending them a check or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. But anyways, thank you for the question, Awesome Dave. I appreciate it. But then, final question of the episode comes to us from Nagachaka, who asks, how many hours do you spend against a tough boss before you decide to go do some grinding and leveling up and coming back later for more vengeance? I've decided to look for some better weapons and to level up some of my materia after a summon battle in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Toss me around for more than 5 hours.
My goodness, dude.
Hashtag humble pie. Yeah, actually, I saw this question coming, Garrett, because on PlayStation Drive this week, Nagachaka talked about how he's just bashing his head against the wall trying to get through these, these summon battles in Final Fantasy VII on normal mode, because he's oh, well, I have to if I can't beat them now, then I can't go for the platinum, where I have to play it on the hardest difficulty,
right?
Where it's even more challenging than what he's playing now, right? So,
I guess these are mini challenges. They're not part of the story. Okay,
they're basically just isolated boss battles that you fight in a simulation room,
and it's completely optional.
Yeah,
it's for trophies though.
100% it is, because you have to finish all of them to get the platinum.
Yeah, no, if something's too annoying, I'm not going to do it. That's my personal thing, is I'll boil it down to, sorry, I'm kind of going off in a different direction with this question. I see where
you're going with this.
The optional challenges in games, it's a very fine line. I can do side quests. I can chase down those threads. I can, is because it really, it helps with the story. It helps, enhancing whatever you do. It helps you progress. Challenges that are optional they don't give you any benefit. Maybe a little bit, very minimal.
Well,
I cannot.
In Final Fantasy VII, I will tell you, if you beat these battles, you get to summon the beast that you're killing. So it actually is a benefit to doing them.
It does help you out. Okay. Yeah. Okay. If that's the case, that's fine. But I see in other games, it's rough. But okay, back to your question. How long will I battle? Usually it's if I'm not beating the boss by the second time, I'll rethink my strategy, or I'll be okay, it's time for some grinding. I think that'll be my take. personally, but it depends on the boss. If it's something like very technical, I would retry it over and over again. If it's something like I am so underleveled, there's just this area back here I could just grind. I would definitely do that over trying to bash my head into the boss. Now 5 hours, that's just you should be done after 1 hour.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. But yeah, do what you need to do, man.
Yeah, you do you is how I always usually say this. Because I can't agree with you, Garrett. I'm an old man. I ain't got no time to just sit there for 5 hours and bash my head against a wall against a certain boss. Like, you better believe I'm getting, and mind you, part of this is like I almost have like this intuition about me where, because I've played so many role-playing games, like, yeah, I can usually tell whether or not I'm dying because I'm under-leveled versus I'm dying because I don't know the mechanics and I need to learn the mechanics. Because if it's a situation where I don't understand the mechanics, then I'll usually just keep going over and over again, because it's very much the Souls thing where, like, you keep going until you get all the patterns down and you learn the boss and you get through it. Like, that's the way I look at it. Whereas if you're under-leveled, like, if I get a sense at all that I'm just way lower in level, or I don't have the equipment or something like that, like my stats are lower than they should be, the second I get that sense, I'm immediately stopping fighting that boss and going and grinding. Right. And coming back. Like, I'm not sitting there bashing my head against the wall trying to beat it without doing that at that point.
Yeah, and if it's to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm underleveled, I don't really want to do this. Let me look up a guide and see if there's any kind of helpful tips or any way of cheesing the certain system. I tend to do that if I really want to finish a game.
There's also too the secret thing that I do that I've talked about on shows a couple times, and I'm not ashamed to admit this. If I'm at a boss battle, because there's a secret third option here where the boss isn't difficult and I'm leveled up correctly, but it's taking forever to kill it and I'm not having fun, then the secret third option is I just bump down the difficulty and then just kill the boss. If I'm not worried about trophies or anything like that, because that's just how I approach a lot of games, because a lot of games I'm not going for the platinum trophy anyways. So it just doesn't bother me if I'm not playing on normal or something like that. If I'm not having fun, and an enemy is that difficult, like to Nagachaka's kind of description here, like, I would rather just bump it down on easy, kill that boss, bump it back to normal, and play the game as normal. That's usually how I would approach that situation. Because I just for the sake of my own sanity and for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've done that with some other RPGs, especially like that happens a lot in a lot of like Japanese style action RPGs where.
Yes, definitely.
Sometimes I'll just be like, well, I know all the boss mechanics and the boss isn't killing me, but it's taking me 10 to 15 minutes just to whack away at him and it's just taking for a moment. Like, no, I'm just going to play the game on easy if a game's got bosses like that, because I just would rather just not deal with it and not deal with how long it takes to get through some bosses because they're just padded out life totals.
Even games where I really enjoyed every other part except for the boss, of some sort of boss. And I can empathize with you, Ryan. The bosses in action JRPGs, they're like spikes of difficulty. Mm-hmm. You're just like, oh, hack and slash, rise, and, grind and all that, with smaller monsters. Okay, here's a big boss. He's going to kill you in one hit, and you're going to have to figure out how that happens. And it's like, no, I'm good. Let me just go through this. You've already set the expectation for me in these smaller monsters. Why is it any different for this bigger monster kind of deal? I think Xenoblade Chronicles 1 was a big one for me, where it's a semi-automatic, action battle system, but the bosses are just kind of insane. Yeah. Especially they're just huge, health point sponges, and then they have these certain moves that really just destroy you. It's just, what, I rather just lower the difficulty and just kind of
just
manage.
Get through it. Especially if you're in it for the story anyways and not really for the combat. Like, why does it matter then at that point, right? Like,
exactly.
I talked about this with Sean, actually, because he did the same thing with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, like the final boss in Xenoblade Chronicles.
Yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 final boss is just it's a joke. It shouldn't have ever been. I don't like it. I hate the design of it. I hate how long it took. So I completely understand lowering the difficulty on that one.
Like we talked, because he remembered that our conversation about that before. He's like, "Oh yeah, why don't I do that?" And then he did it on easy, and he's like, "Oh, he just got through it." And then he got to the end of the story, and he wept because the story was great.
Oh my gosh, the end of that story is so good. I cried like a baby at the end of that one. Yeah.
Whereas it's different in Nagachaka's case, because I know he's going for the platinum, and that's why he's doing this. Which at that point you kind of just have to deal with it, unless you just realize that you don't actually need the platinum, and then you just go about your day.
You just go on with your life without any sense of requirement or dedication of this random
I mean, I can already tell you right now, when I play Rebirth at some point this year, I'm not going for that platinum. I already know I'm not going for it. So I will not be shy about being like, oh well, if this boss is like too difficult, if it's kicking my butt like he's describing, I'm just like, no, I'm just gonna do it on easy.
Yeah, I was looking at a while back when I was playing Horizon Zero Dawn, the first game. I was like, oh, maybe I could go for the platinum. And they're like, complete every challenge at the maximum ranking. I'm like, nope.
But that's easy. Even I have the platinum in that game.
I just, no, I when it comes to challenges, I can't do it. When you put, here's an optional challenge and you have to get this S score. And I'm like, nope. I'm good. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I hate timing. I hate ranking. I think that's partially why I don't care for Metal Gear Solid.
Okay.
At a certain point, I just don't like. Here's a rank of your mission. It's just like, no. Why are you grading me like in grade school? It's just like
Metal Gear Solid usually doesn't do that until the end of the game, though.
Oh, really?
Unless you're doing unless you're doing the VR missions. The VR missions specifically are designed with like that challenge mindset in mind. But
so. The only old Metal Gear Solid game I've really played was Peace Walker.
Okay. Well, I think that's different, because that was developed for the PSP, and that was like with portability in mind and, giving you smaller challenges. So that makes sense. Whereas if you play like Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, like none of them are like that. They grade you at the end, and you get special items if you beat the game faster.
I see.
Stuff like that. But yeah, it's different. Also, Garrett, speaking of platinum updates, I made actual progress on the Final Fantasy 14 platinum at this point, because the one that's supposed to take 1,000+ hours to get, I am now only 20 trophies away out of the 100 trophies it takes to get.
That's insane, dude. 100 trophies.
Well, I got my 80th trophy in that game this week for the non-DLC trophies, because there's 100 trophies just to get the platinum, and then there's also all the DLC trophies for all the expansions and stuff like that. So it's a lot. It's a lot of
that. That sounds like a lot, man. Wow.
Yeah. When it came to Xbox, it's like 4,000 achievement points as well for the whole game. So yeah, but it's fine. It's just there's one trophy that I'm only a fourth of the way through, and I've been playing the game now for 4,000 hours. So what could go wrong? Well, I'll get there one day, I'm sure. We'll see.
What's the percentage on that platinum? It must be 0.01.
It is literally 0.01.
yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, I think it's actually one of the rarest platinums on PSN profiles is the Final Fantasy 14 platinum. Yeah,
that sounds about right.
Although that's a little bit different, because it was easier to get before the Shadowbringers expansion, where they updated the trophy list and they made it like infinitely harder. Where you have to basically complete, like, just to throw it out there, you have to complete 5,000 of these little instance battles called Fates, and each one of them takes about 15 to 20 minutes to do, but you have to complete 5,000 of them on top of everything else, on top of completing 2,000 dungeons or raids, each of which take about 20 to 30 minutes.
Oh boy.
So it's a lot of hours, Garrett. It's so many. It's so many. I'll get it one. I think one of these days, though, Garrett, maybe in like 4 or 5 years from now, I will have the Final Fantasy 14 platinum.
I think if I dropped all my games and started playing Final Fantasy 14 right now, I probably wouldn't finish the game by like end of my life. It's just so many hours.
No. You could at least get through the main story campaign. It's only 400 hours.
Okay, that'll take 2 years.
See, you can get through it. You'll get through it in your lifetime. It's just the platinum is ridiculous, even for that game standards. But anyways, that's gonna do it for this episode of the RPG Cave. But before we go, Garrett, we got to thank all of our patrons over at patreon.com/carpoolgaming, starting with our ultimate producers, Tony Baker from the Quest 4 Pixels podcast. You can check them out over at youtube.com/quest4pixels today. That's the number 4, Garrett. We keep doing 4 on the screen.
It's the number 4.
It's the number 4.
Not F-O-R.
Not 4 spelled. That's not how you spell 4.
F-O-R?
That's just F-O-U-R, Garrett.
Well, that's the thing. It's a pun. Quest 4 Pixels, F-O-R. Of course people will get confused. So it's the number 4, not F-O-U-R, not F-O-R. It's the number. It's literally type in the number 4 in there. It's Quest 4 Pixels.
I need out of here. Get me out of here, Chewy. We also got Jonathan Brown, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the PlayStation Drive. You can find the link tree to all of his music at linktr.ee/pme-jib. The link is found in the description of this podcast as well. Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team. You can check them out over at phoenixoverdrive.com, or maybe head on over to that Extra Life website. Maybe sign up for Phoenix Overdrive's team, and then maybe we'll see y'all in New York in November. Wink, wink. And then last but not least, Cwagmire, who humbly reminds you that the best babes are in fact Xenobabes. Our platinum producers, Robby, Bobby Miller, Smokin Joe, and Tim Paullin, and our gold members, Adam K, Anna, Awesome Dave 1337, who loves Final Fantasy VIII, BobLoblaw, Brad Moore, Brian Reese, Cecily Carrozza, CrocoKyle, Dan and Luma, Dannohh, Emily O'Kelly, Jan32, Marcus O'Neill, Peje EP, Shane Erickson, Tim Aulph, and Toxic. Huge thank you to all of our patrons again. And if you want to head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/carpoolgaming, hop in the car with us and choose the tier that's right for you. And now, Garrett, plugs go.
You can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever.
X.
Elon's Twitter at Blaine Explosion. You can also find me in the Discord. I'm pretty active in there. I always read your messages in the RPG Cave. I don't know. The Savoy Prime normally puts in 4 or 5 different articles. 3 of them are fake, at least in my heart. And
I was just going to say, like, the RPG Cave channel gets a little out of control sometimes.
No, it does, for sure. And I'm glad everyone, talks in there. I vicariously live through Muffin Mon's video game journey. No joke. Through the RPG Cave channel. He just finished Unicorn Overlord. He absolutely loves that too. It's sounding like a pretty strong year for Kevin Ainsworth and the RPG side for 2024. So
I was going to say, I think he's like the one person that I know who's played all of them.
Like all the current RPGs, like up
all
to date.
All the RPGs we talked about on like last week's episode. Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Although we need to get him on the Neptunia games. Those are the only ones he's really missing.
Yeah. Apparently his brother is really he's like a legit Neptunia fan, not us fake suckers that, make fun of it. But yeah.
Also, I love the fact that the RPG Cave channel in the Discord is also slowly becoming the place where we post all the decreases in price for Unicorn Overlord, because it just keeps going down.
Oh, it just keeps going down, man. You just see deals everywhere.
$30 at Walmart now.
Yeah. I think Walmart's having like a huge in-store sale. I'm wondering if it's really the downfall of physical games media, really in major store retailers, because Best Buy is really going away with physical games. Mm-hmm. Now we see Walmart. I could just really see it. Like, we are not going to have that much physical games in Target, Walmart. I'm thinking those type of stores, retailer stores. So
yeah, like you'll probably have to order most of those online, I would imagine, at some point, right?
Yeah.
Oh, last thing before I wrap up as well. I forgot, we got the announcement of the showcase for Metaphor. How excited are we?
Yeah, no, that was hot off the presses. Very excited. April 22nd.
So next Monday.
Yes, Earth Day. So be excited. We will get to see if there's any extra announcements. I doubt it's a Game Pass deal. I think it's going to be it's going to be a full game release. I'm very curious. maybe they won't, show anything here, but I'm imagining later this year, Persona 6 is really, it's coming. Mm-hmm. They're going to announce soon.
I think Persona 6 is, I'm guessing, I think it's next year. I think we're getting Persona 6.
I think a Japan release next year. I don't know about worldwide, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, they did worldwide for both Reload and Metaphor. They're doing worldwide, so
true.
Like I think they're all aboard the worldwide trade at this point.
Well, yeah. With Persona 3 Reload, they were worldwide. So, and it's interesting. Metaphor and Fantasios, the main Persona teams developing, or the previous Persona 5 team is making Metaphor. So I'm curious. Where does Persona 6 come from?
Yeah. I think we'll talk about this more after we watch the showcase next week, because I think they're probably also going to announce the release date here as well. So like,
oh yeah, definitely.
I imagine that this is this fall's game, and then which then opens them up to like maybe at TGS or something else. That's where they announce Persona 6 or Game Awards or something like that.
I can see Game Awards. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Like I think you're right. I think we get that Persona 6 announcement this year.
Man, I can't wait because the color's gonna be green.
Heck yeah, it is. Let's go, bud.
Yes,
green's my favorite color, so I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do to that with green. Every color that they do, they have a style to it, and I love it.
Yep.
So we'll see how it goes.
Also, we got the rumors pop up this week too that Persona 1 and 2 are getting remakes now, and I'm just like, just give me all this.
Bonkers.
I want all that stuff, because like I will just eat up Persona games until they stop giving me them at this point.
Pretty much.
But as for me, you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, as Ryan and Turford. And you also find us on X at Carpool Gaming, right here, youtube.com/Carpool Gaming. Of course, podcast services around the globe. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the 133rd level of the RPG Cave, and we're out.
Bye-bye.